All right. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to South Queens Women's March's virtual voter teach-in. We are so thankful for you joining us tonight. Just wanted to let you all know that we are also live on Facebook right now, so we could reach our community where they are and make sure that we get this information out to the masses. My name is Aminta Kilawan Narain, and I'm the founder and director of this amazing organization, South Queens Women's March. We got started just a few years ago at the peak of the pandemic, and the original idea was to literally have a women's march that looked and felt like our community in our community. Unfortunately, the pandemic hit and we had to pivot, but we knew we had to meet women, girls, and gender expansive people where they are and to provide them with the tools and resources necessary to thrive in their respective lives. And so that's exactly what we've been doing, whether it's with our mutual aid work and our pop-up pantries and period poverty distributions. As you probably know, we're going to be having a pantry on Friday at our South Queens Women's March office space. So please be on the lookout on our social media channels for that. We also do a lot of work around art and art as healing, because we know that art has so much power to be a catalyst for social justice and for healing in our community. We also do youth and professional development, recognizing that our community is under-resourced and a lot of young people don't have the liberty to have high quality counseling, college readiness, etc. And also people who are looking for jobs may not know how to begin when it comes to writing a resume or a cover letter. We also do civic engagement work, and that's what brings us here tonight. We are obviously a nonprofit organization, so we are not here to tell you who to vote for, but what we are here to tell you to do is to participate civically if you can. This is such an important duty that we have to be members of our community, meaningful members of our community. And it's a way for us to ensure that we get the resources that we deserve in the South Queens area. And so with that, we're here tonight to talk all about currently the primary elections that are happening right now. You literally can go out and vote through early voting right now. And my colleagues, who I have the honor and privilege of introducing, Ariel Clarke and Anjali Seegobin, will be taking you through all of the ins and outs of voting, of what these primaries are going to look like, what's on the ballot. Again, we can't get into the candidates themselves, but we can tell you what's going to be on the ballot so you can understand better who are the folks that are going to be representing us, what are their roles in government, what do they do respectively, and why does it matter for us to vote for them, vote for one of them. We will also be talking about the history of voting. So I'm gonna stop here. I'm going to pass it on to my amazing colleagues, Ariel Clarke, who is our Youth Civic Engagement Fellow for the summer through Future Leaders in Action, and Anjali Seegobin, who is our Civic Engagement Coordinator. Both of these individuals have been working very hard at various civic engagement projects. You probably have seen us out in the community. Shout out to many of our volunteers and our members, including Sarah Mohammed and Karina Nieves, who are joining us tonight. And these are folks who have been out and about all over the areas of Richmond Hill and South Ozone Park, specifically to raise awareness about the People's Money, which is an effort that is shepherded by the New York City Civic Engagement Commission to have community members vote on a project that they want to see implemented in these neighborhoods. And so we're encouraging you to vote, obviously, in the elections, but we're also encouraging you to fill out a ballot for the People's Money to make sure we get the money, $50,000 for a project that's listed on the ballot, which we worked really hard at getting to this point. So please help us help the community by filling out your ballot, and you'll see us in the streets of South Queens again for the next few days to do the final stint at getting the word out about the People's Money. With that, I'm going to turn it now over to Ariel and Anjali to lead us through this workshop.
Hi, everybody. My name is Ariel Clarke. Thank you so much for introducing us, Aminta. I'll ask right now, as you share the screen, we're going to pretty much do an overview of the event as well, similar to what my colleague Aminta has explained. So once the slides are up, we'll talk a little bit further.
Are you all able to see my screen?
Yes,
Okay, just wanted to make sure. All right.
we can see your screen. It's just not in full screen. Did you want it in full screen?
So it's not, for whatever reason, it's not letting me do full screen.
Okay.
So if
That's
this is all right, we'll stick to this.
I think you have to click slideshow.
I did that. Yeah, let me try again, but hopefully, does this work? It pauses the screen sharing for some reason.
Hmm.
Let me. Yeah, I'm not sure why. So I might have to do it in just the other screen.
That's okay.
Yep.
Okay, try again. Does this work?
Yep, it's
Okay,
perfect.
great. Perfect.
Okay, can you take us to the next slide, please? All right, so what we'll be talking about today, right? We're talking about why voting matters. What is voting? When and where can we vote? And how to get at the vote as voters yourself.
So before we jump in, we're gonna do a little bit of introductions. So my name is Anjali. I'm the Civic Engagement Coordinator for South Queens Women's March. So we'll just go around, we'll say our names. We can put it in the chat as well. If you don't have if you're not able to unmute. And just say how many people of voting age do you know? I can go ahead and just say how much off the top of my head. I feel like I know about like 15 to 20 because I'm thinking about my friend group and also my family, and that's a lot of people. So I know a lot of people of voting age. So you can go ahead and type it in the chat, or if anybody else wants to unmute, say their names and how many people of voting age they know. For those of us that just joined, we're just putting either in the chat or unmuting and saying our name, and how many people of voting age that we may know.
I'll just go. My name is Aminta, and I don't know. I think maybe like I personally know 200 people of voting age, maybe.
I can go next. Hi, Bubba. Yes. Yes, my daughter. Sorry. My name is Angelica. I would say 20. I feel like I know 20 people who could vote. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like I don't personally know 200 people that are voting age. But I feel like I do know, like I don't know them, but you know of people that definitely are voting age. But yeah, it can be kind of hard to calculate. So Sarah said 50 at least. Karina said that's hard to calculate, maybe on my block about 15. Yeah. And then I agree, Angelica. I feel like mine is at like a good 20. Like I feel like I could encourage those good 20 to vote. Okay, great. If we're done with introductions, we can go on to our next slide.
Now that we're acquainted, we want to do another activity. We're going to be talking a lot today, y'all, so I hope you're ready to do so. So with this activity, feel free to mention it in the chat or unmute yourself, simply just answering these 3 questions or 3 statements, shall I say. 1 reason you think voting is important, 1 reason people don't vote, and 1 issue about city life you care about. Take a second to type that in the chat or just verbally unmute and say it. while we wait, I can say a couple of mine. Why not? So for me, one reason I think voting is important is because every person's voice ultimately matters, right? Every single person's opinion, every single person's experience at the end of the day should be valued and seen and heard. So when you vote, you're taking the opportunity to show that your voice matters and people around you can see that it matters. One reason people don't vote is because they may not know fully how to vote, or they just simply don't understand how the whole experience is of voting. Could be, of course, misinformation, or they don't necessarily have the resources to do so. And lastly, one issue about city life that I care about is redlining. It's something that happens commonly across every area within the nation or just within South Queens itself. So something I care about in city life because it's very much so an issue that's present. All right, I see some folks in the chat as well. Sarah had mentioned to make positive changes, definitely important for voting. Some people don't understand as a reason for why people don't vote. And of course, an issue that Sarah cares about is poverty within city life.
I'll also chime in if that's okay. So I think one reason voting is important is because it's the way, unfortunately or fortunately, that politicians know that particular communities exist, and therefore there's an acknowledgement of those communities, and therefore a trickle-down effect of resources being allocated to those communities because they comprise of a substantial enough voting block that their vote matters. And I think it's important for us to vote, to demonstrate that we are a sizable enough voting block to bring resources to our respective communities. One reason people don't vote, I think, is because a lot of folks think that politics is corrupt, and they're like, this is not going to do anything for my community anyway, and they don't necessarily see results when they do vote, and so therefore they just sometimes choose not to vote, or they just are like, well, I don't believe in politics, and I think that's one reason people don't vote. One issue about city life I care about, and it's similar to what Sarah mentioned, homelessness and affordable housing, I think are really critical. And I think that the way in which sometimes officials respond in turn to these issues is not the most humane or well thought out. And there's so many better ways to address these issues and poverty at large that I don't think are being done. So that's an issue that I care a lot about.
I can also chime in really quick. So one reason I think voting is important is obviously it has such an impact on our lives, like directly, indirectly, at a local level, on a more higher level, government level. One reason why I think people don't vote. So when I was in college, I actually did like a little study about the Indo-Caribbean population and why we don't vote. And a lot of the results I got was that they were experiencing a sort of like distrust with the government because of their experiences from where they're from, whether it was Guyana, Trinidad, Jamaica, wherever. They did not see results in their government, and their hand was kind of, as they say, burned from their government. So, because of that, they don't have a trust right now in New York and Queens to, or wherever they live in New York, to also vote. One issue about city life I care about, obviously, climate change, because we just experienced something from that. I personally was not here, but it sounded very scary. And yeah, so that is an issue that I care about. And clearly, when it happened, New York was not prepared for it. So yeah.
Thank you so much for all of you for sharing. And I do want to say, keep these responses in mind. For the future, we will be looking up at these. And I do also want to quickly share, someone else had mentioned theirs before we move on to the next slide. So Karina had mentioned for why voting is important, to elect people who will represent us. And then for people who don't vote, for why they don't vote, apathy has to change. especially here in New York, people feel politicians don't have their best interests. This is why many people have turned away from Dems or Republicans, so Democrats, Republicans. We have closed primaries in New York. Independents and other third-party people should have access to the primaries. We need open primaries. And lastly, for an issue that this person cares about, I care about informing others right now, trying to get a middle school for North Richmond Hill. Thank you so much for sharing. We can go on to the next one now.
So we're just going to watch a quick video. This will go a little into voting rights and the voting history. It has very important dates that we can look out for, especially 1971, which is on the cover right there. So we'll give them into a little time to get the link, and then we'll watch a short clip.
Do you know that more people in the United States check their Facebook and watch than exercise to vote? We've got some serious issues to deal with. So how come so many of us don't even bother to vote? Is it because we don't care? Or maybe it's because we don't know our history.
So let's go back, way back. Our country's first election came after fighting for our independence, a fight that cost many lives, but it was worth it because instead of being ruled by a king, we were finally able to make our own laws.
But not everybody was allowed to participate. You see, back then, you had to own property, be white, and a man in order to actually vote. Now, things continued that way for about 80 years, until after the Civil War, when slavery was abolished and all men were given the right to vote.
Now hold up a minute. Just because we had the right to vote didn't mean we could use it. See, all these new voters wanted to participate, which threatened the people in power and their ability to stay in power. So they tried to stop us with violence and shady new requirements like literacy tests and poll taxes. We had to fight for nearly 100 years before the Voting Rights Act passed, which finally outlawed these dirty tricks.
And you weren't the only ones that had to fight for your right to vote. Somehow women got left out and had to organize and fight state by state, until we took our fight to Washington and finally got our right to vote all across the country. And even once the laws guaranteed every person the ability to vote, you still had to be 21 in most states. So when our government began drafting people under 21 to go fight in Vietnam, they realized their lives were at stake and they had no say. Young people all across the country rose up in protest and demanded that everyone over 18 should be allowed to vote.
And since then, young people's votes have been crucial in deciding lots of big elections. Like in 2008, when a black candidate had a real chance to become president, young people showed up in record numbers. And every year, we make up a larger share of the voting population, giving young people more power, but only if we participate.
So let me break it down. Together, there is so much we can decide, like whether or not we should go to war, or how we spend our money, and how we power our lives.
We can determine who has the right to marry, and who has the right to choose, what possessions should be outlawed, and whether or not we should legalize.
It's up to you to make your choices and shape our future. If we sit on the sidelines, then others will make it work for them instead of us. So let's make our voices heard.
So what would it take for you to vote?
Folks, some technical difficulty in projecting full screen. So if that doesn't work, I will go back to this.
Yeah, while Minta is just looking for her technical difficulty figuring out. Does anyone have any comments about the video? Did they like it? Anything they like? Anything they didn't know before? I didn't know that the voting age was 21 at one point. I did not know. So
Yeah, it was 21, and at one point they did change it because people were saying, well, young people were saying if we're young enough to fight in wars, we should be young enough to vote. So yeah, that was something that piqued my interest as well, because if you're young enough to do that, you should be able to vote as well. Any other comments? Anything that sparked your interest regardless? Well, we can continue as we talk about more periods within history where voting and voting rights came about and various individuals from various groups were involved. So as you can see on the screen, missing history that's not necessarily spoken about in regards to voting and civic engagement. So 1924, the Indian Citizenship Act gives Native Americans the right to vote. 1943, Mugensen Act gives Chinese immigrants the right to vote. 1961, 23rd Amendment gives DC residents the vote for president and vice president. They still do not have the right to vote for senator or representative. Any questions, comments, concerns about any of these three time periods? Okay, you can continue.
thank you, Ariel. So we can play now my favorite game ever, Jeopardy, but it's a civic Jeopardy. So we can have everyone play like individually. So if you can unmute and say which category you want and then which number under whichever category, or you can type it in the chat, whichever one works. So yeah, if anyone wants to go first, or I could just play them all and get all of the money. That's also an option.
All right, I'm just gonna pick one, y'all, and then y'all can say the answer. Let's do elections 200.
Ariel, you just saw this.
Hey, I definitely did, but I'm not gonna say the answer because I have all the answers, but feel free, anybody, shout it out. We just talked about this. Hopefully y'all remember. Okay, I'll give y'all a hint. So they used to say,
Sarah.
oh, nice. Thank you, Sarah. Appreciate it. Is it 1924? Let's see. 1924. This is 54 years after the 15th Amendment was passed, granting citizens the right to vote regardless of race. 1924 was when the U.S. admitted Native Americans born in the U.S. to full U.S. citizenship. Thank you, Sarah.
Yeah. Okay, Sarah, since you got that one, you get to pick again. So what do you want?
Okay, same category for 400.
All right.
All right. What is early voting?
Do I have to answer too?
Yeah.
Can I? Oh.
No, Angelica, you can go.
Yeah. Early voting is the period before the election deadline.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, let's see. See what it says. Yeah. In addition to Election Day, New York State allows people to vote early, including on Saturday and Sunday. The location of where people will vote will be different if they vote early than if they vote on election day. So yeah, I don't know if we also know this, but yeah, the early day voting sites will probably be different from where your actual poll site will be. So I'm gonna take it as that was a good answer. So okay, so I think that was 400.
Mm-hmm.
So yay. Next one. Angelica, you can pick again if you like.
Definitions 400.
What is a closed primary? I don't think
Is it that it's only open to the registered party, like Democrats can only vote when it's the Democratic primary and so on?
Yeah,
It's
I'm pretty
closed
sure.
off to independents.
Let's see. I'm pretty sure that's correct.
Yeah.
Let's see. Yep. Only registered party members can participate in a political party's primary election. In New York, the winner of a primary election for a statewide or federal election is the candidate who receives the greatest number of votes, even if he or she does not win more than 50% of votes cast. So yeah, you are correct.
And thank you, Karina.
Yes. Thank you, Karina, for adding that. Okay, Karina, do you want to pick one, or Sarah, do you want to go again?
Karina's turn.
Feel free to type it in the chat, Karina. We can click the one for you. Okay.
Okay,
Voting
voting
200.
200. What percentage of eligible New York City voters are registered to vote? This is kind of hard.
Yeah.
I don't think I know.
What's your favorite number, Karina?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think it's 50. I was thinking 52.
Y'all be surprised.
I think it's less.
Oh, really? How
Yeah.
much? Like, are we thinking 20%?
Like maybe a 30.
Oh, really?
35.
Okay. Okay. All right.
Oh,
So
that makes
50s
sense.
and 40s.
All right, let's see.
Oh.
90.
What?
Wow.
90.
That's interesting.
Do we get that amount of turnout?
I don't think so.
Probably
Okay.
not. No.
I definitely don't think so. Okay. We can go back to our homepage. Yep. Who wants to? Karina, Sarah? Sarah, do you want to pick one?
Voting for 400?
Okay. What percentage of New York City voters turned out to vote in the last local primary election in 2021?
What are the odds?
Like 40%?
Okay.
Okay.
Let's see.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Only 26.5. Oh, Karina said she thinks it was 36. Close. That is close.
Very close.
And even less people voted in the
Wow.
2021 general election. Yeah. Wow.
Sad.
Yeah. Okay. You want to pick another one?
Let's do definition 600.
Okay.
Aim high this time.
What is ranked choice voting? Anyone? I'm sure we all have heard of ranked choice voting for sure.
Yeah, I think it's when a candidate doesn't get over 50% of the vote. Anyone, then your vote goes to the second choice or something like that until a candidate get over 50.
Let's see. Shall we check? Yep. uses ranked choice voting for its own elections. The system required candidates to win more than 50% of the votes cast. Each voter gets to rank in order of preferences 5 candidates. We will play ranked. Yeah, we will play a ranked choice voting game later, so you can kind of see and know better how ranked choice voting works. Do you want to pick another one, Sarah?
Elections for, what is that, 600?
Yes. Where can a person learn about who will be on their ballot? I think that was supposed to say. Where can a person learn about who? Yeah. I don't think where they can learn who they will be. I think who will be on their ballot. Yes, Karina, vote.nyc website. Let's see, that's what it says. Well, yeah, same thing, same concept. It's like New York City dot whatever websites you can usually find where to vote, or sorry, not where to vote, where your poll site is. Yeah. Oh, we can do one more. Anybody else? We can just do voting for 600. What percentage of New York City voters turned out to vote in the last presidential general election in 2020? 2020 was a big year. So, any guesses?
I hope at least 50%.
Yeah, let's see. What does it say? 61.
Okay, good.
Not bad.
Okay. And then we can just finish it off. We want. Yeah, because there's just one more. And what is a primary election?
Great place to end. Anyone, any thoughts? Any guesses?
So where the candidate is chosen?
Yeah, we can see. What does it say? An election used to narrow the field of candidates. Think basketball, or soccer playoff games, which decide which team plays in the final. So yeah, basically where one candidate will be narrowed down. Yeah. Okay. Thank you all for playing. I think Sarah's going home with all the money. But yes, thank you all for your participation. Karina and Angelica, we appreciate it. And Ariel, pass it back to you.
Thank you, thank you. So as we all saw within the Jeopardy, right, we know a little bit about what percentages of New York City voters are actually registered to vote and those who voted within the 2021 primary. So 90% of New York City voters have registered or are registered to vote. 27% have voted within the 2021 primary election. So with this in mind, right, there is the Stop the Drop campaign. The Stop the Drop campaign is essentially a campaign to close the gap between the 90% of people who registered to vote and the less than 30% that vote in the local elections. So with this, just like today, as we're having this teach in and trying to encourage folks to get involved with civic engagement, this campaign is really focused on making sure that we close that gap and people who are registered are actively voting and there aren't low amounts of turnout.
So some people may say that their vote doesn't matter, but in primary elections, when turnout is low, increasing turnout by even a little can make a difference in who wins. So, for example, in 2019, the Queens District Attorney primary race was decided by 60 votes. The winner went on to win the general election by almost 100,000 votes. So we will now look at the positions on the ballot in 2023.
Okay, so within 2023 in our New York City elections, within the election, there will be an election for the city council, separate from the mayor, the public advocate, comptroller, and the borough presidents, which is happening for the first time in 20 years. This June, there'll be no primaries in Staten Island. There'll only be 21 out of the 51 city council districts will have a primary, and the primary will consist of ranked choice voting, which you talked about briefly over Jeopardy, which will be used within the city council races, and ranked choice voting won't be used in 4 boroughs that vote for the judge of the city court, the civil court, and Queens and Bronx that vote for district attorneys. Lastly, several council districts are new and or have new boundaries due to redistricting after the census.
So we can move on to some really important dates to look out for the primary election deadlines. To apply to vote by mail, that happened on June 12th. For the last day to register to vote, that also already happened. It was June 17th, but you could still do early voting. So that's from June 17th to the 25th. And then really important election day is on June 27th. And then if you want to return your mail-in ballot, that is also on June 27th.
Okay, so this is also extremely important. These sites are where you can find information about the election and where you can learn how to vote in person. Of course, the deadline has passed, but where you can learn to vote by mail as well in the future, where you can find what's on the ballot. So the candidates that will be within your district and what exactly your districts are, where you can find your polling site, whether it's early or regular day voting. And of course, you can visit this website to find out voter registration status. I'll be dropping all these links within the Zoom chat in a second.
Okay. Also, just wanted to give a little shout out to Sherry Algrado. She is the chair of Community Board 9, and she's always been a very big supporter of South Queens. She's also really civically involved in our community. So just wanted to shout her out before continuing with this slide. So for our voting rights slide, so under the Voting Rights Act passed in 2022 by New York State, the following counties must be provided with language services. So we have New York and King, Queens. New York state law also requires election inspectors and poll clerks to assist persons with limited English proficiency during elections. So some of these languages in different boroughs are Bengali, Cantonese, Hindi, Korean, Mandarin, Punjabi, and Spanish. The CEC supplements BOE, which is Board of Election Services, and languages and boroughs not covered by the Board of Elections, which is Arabic, Bengali, Chinese, French, Haitian, Creole, Polish, Korean, Italian, Russian, Urdu, and Yiddish. So these are just some of the services that the Board of Election actually doesn't provide, but the CEC does. So we can go to the next slide now.
So now we're going to touch upon the various roles and or positions that are going to be voted on within the upcoming primaries or the primaries that are occurring right now. So the New York City Council, this position and or those who hold positions on this council, they have 2-year terms, and there also is a 2025 4-year term. So their jobs or their duties consist of introducing and voting on laws for all aspects of city life, negotiating the city's budget with the mayor and approving it, monitoring city agencies to ensure that they're actively serving New Yorkers, reviewing land use and making decisions about growth and development, and lastly, directing $5 million annually to local projects in their district, AKA the people's money.
So now for district attorney, they can choose whether or which charges are filed against people who are arrested for crimes in their borough. They can also determine what kind of sentences, which includes alternative sentences, which are thought for people convicted of crimes. They can also lastly choose which petty crimes to delegate to NYPD for prosecution.
This next position is the civil court judge, which is a 10-year term. They hear out landlord-tenant cases. They hear cases for claims up to $50,000. They hear personal injury, business dispute, and other cases.
Okay, so now we're going into ranked choice voting, which we talked about earlier in our Jeopardy. So voters can rank their candidates on a ballot, and votes are counted for each candidate. The lowest vote getter is eliminated. So if that candidate doesn't get more than 50%, which we briefly talked about and Sarah added and helped us out with that, votes for an eliminated candidate are redistributed to the next ranked choice. Votes are counted for the remaining candidates, and eliminations and redistributions continue until candidate has more than 50%. So the really important thing here is that you would need more than 50% in order to be counted for like the next ranking. So we're going to demonstrate really quickly how this works.
Okay, so we're gonna do this using the chat feature, but of course, if it's easier for you to unmute and say this, feel free to do this as well. So as my colleague Anjali had explained, I'm going to mention this in the chat as well. So we're going to have y'all rank your favorite New York City public parks from 1 to 5. So 1 being your favorite and 5 being your least favorite. Right, so we'll break this down in the sense of that. So say if your favorite was Central Park, that would be 1, right? And then from there, you would go down the line, picking the ones that are your 1 to 5. And the way it works on the ranked choice voting ballot is it would go down based off of the boxes. So if 1 is Central Park, then you put that in the first box, right? That's vertical in the first box. Then within the next box for number 2, that row, you would put a check or an X depending on what the ballot says by putting a X or a check within the second box, but diagonally within, no, vertically within that row. So please, from 1 to 5, rank your favorite public parks and we'll test it out together. Okay, we got vote in here in the chat, and that's really important. I'm happy you said what you said, Karina. So Karina had said Central Park as top 1, then Prospect Park, then Flushing, then I don't know, right? This sometimes happens commonly for a lot of people when they're voting. They may know some of the candidates, but may not know all of the candidates, and that's completely okay. But as you are taking the time to vote, it's very important to, of course, make sure you know the information about the candidates. But if for any reason it slips your mind or you aren't sure of the candidates, right, this is where kind of process of elimination comes in. It's better to vote and utilize your vote on all of the rankings than to not at all. And of course, they ask for you to vote on every single option, right? So, and of course, if there's something that said otherwise, you follow what is stated to you within your voting site. Oh, it says you don't also need to select all that. Yes. So if stated otherwise, please don't, you don't have to, but it's if you can, that's totally up to you. We have 2 other folks. Well, we have Anjali had mentioned Central, Flushing, Meadows, and Prospect Park. Sarah had mentioned Central, Flushing, Prospect, Orchid, and the last one, the Seaside Wildfield Nature for Staten Island. Anyone else would like to go? I was shocked. Anjali had mentioned, I'll be shocked if anyone has been to Seaside Wildfield Nature. Why? What's wrong with that park?
No, people don't go to Staten Island.
Yes.
You.
Okay. go to the aquarium in Staten Island. Understandable. I go to the one in Brooklyn, but that's surprising too. That's interesting. All right, we can continue. I hope this gave you more of an understanding of ranked choice voting and what it'll look like for you when you go vote.
So we can also go back to our activity, if we can all recall. We talked a little about important issues surrounding the city, like city life. So now we can think about the issues we brought up, and then we're going to select this issue if we had multiple ones. And then think about which offices or elected officials that we kind of went over, who would be the person that has the most influence over this. And you can also recall a few of the reasons why people don't vote and why voting matters if you didn't get a chance to share that. But let me think. I think for climate change, I would say that would also, I would say maybe city council can have an influence over this if they want to pass certain acts or kind of pressure the mayor in passing certain laws or acts related to climate change or things related to renewable energy. Anyone else, if they had any other issue that they had brought up and which office or elected official they think would have influence over this one.
I guess I said poverty, and I guess that's food insecurity. I think the city council, when they negotiate in their budgets, maybe they can help.
Yeah, that's valid. Yeah, a lot of these things, our city council members, they help us kind of connect with higher levels of government. So they're kind of like they are our local representatives. And they're able to help have a say in how the budget is redistributed. And so can confirm on that.
Yes, that's right. That's right.
Yeah.
For the housing and homelessness bit, definitely city council for sure. In fact, the city council has recently passed many bills to that end to try to curb homelessness and to provide homeless folks who want to move out of homeless shelters, which are usually unsafe and for so many different reasons. People don't want to be in shelter, but they sometimes have no choice. And so, and there's actually legislation that would support people to get vouchers to move out into permanent housing and to become meaningful participants in our economy as well. So there's that. But also with homelessness, one of the things that we're seeing an increased amount of is street homelessness in New York City and folks living on the streets. And so there's obviously two different approaches, whether you criminalize that or whether you seek to, provide those services that people need to actually get back on their feet, right? Whether that's mental health services or literal permanent housing or supportive housing. So I think the district attorneys also play a piece here because they could have an impact depending on how they decide to prosecute certain existing crimes. So I think it's multiple folks on that.
Yeah, and then we can add on because the civil court judge also hears landlord tenant cases, so that can also be related to homelessness. Anybody else want to add any of them, what they think? If not, we can just move on. Okay.
Okay, so for this one, this is also a fun fact in the lines to what we talked about with turnout and Stop the Drop campaign. And also when we did our reflection just now, turnout increases when people share basic information about elections with their friends, family, and neighbors and why voting matters to them. It's oftentimes that connection, it's oftentimes information sharing, it's oftentimes creating that sense of community as well that can emphasize and really bring out that turnout within the polls.
Okay, so just a few little things before we all leave. So there are different ways you can know more about the elections coming up, whether you want to look up your ballot, if you want to find your polling site. You can also refer to the link that we had dropped in the chat. That'll tell you more about where to find your polling site and how your ballot looks like. You can also sign up to pledge to vote. So we are also going to drop a link for that as well. I hope all of you will, I know you all were going to pledge to vote if you're eligible. And then you can also think about 5 people who are within your inner circle, maybe 5 people that live in your house, maybe 5 of your friends. And you can also be like, hey, do you know the primaries coming up? And then you can tell them they can pledge to vote with us as well. And also really, really important, if you want to just have a little practice for voting, this is different from the elections, the Board of Elections, but there is the participatory budgeting, which is from the Civic Engagement Commission. And you can basically vote on an idea or a project that you think could really help our community. And you can vote for more than one idea. So we can also send a link for that as well. But we also have a voting site, which is our office, 130th Liberty Avenue. You can come and cast your vote there as well to help drive change in our community. And also, we are going to be doing outreach and canvassing for participatory budgeting. If you'd like to sign up and do a community canvas with us, you can also sign up for text banks as well. This is just for our Get Out the Vote, which is different from participatory budgeting. So that was a lot of information thrown at you. So I can go over it one more time really quickly so you can look up your ballot, find your polling site in the links in the chat. You can sign up to pledge to vote as well, and then get 5 other people you know to also sign up to pledge to vote. And then you can also cast your vote for the participatory budgeting, where you pick an idea you think could help our community. And then you can sign up to canvas with us. And any other remarks, Ariel, if you want to add anything?
Yes, I definitely want to say thank you so much for you all joining us today. Really appreciate you taking the time out of your day, out of your lives, your busy, busy schedules to come be here with us and to get involved with civic engagement, get involved in providing a change not only for yourself, but for the betterment of all the communities around you. It really, really does make a tremendous impact when you're here, when you're trying and you're being present. So thank you so much for folks on Zoom and folks on Facebook for watching this and for being here with us. And I do wish you all a very, very great night.
Thank you. Thank you. Good night.
Good night.
Thank you all so much. Good night.
Good night.
As I mentioned, the video will be available on YouTube for all of you to watch as well in the future. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Good night.